Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Power. I give it to him. The glory. I give it to him. Forever. I give it to him. And ever. I give it to him. The power. I give it to him. The glory. I give it to him. Forever. I give it to him. And ever. I give it to him.
Hey everybody, welcome. This is the Bold and the Beautiful. We are here right now. We are getting ready to start our broadcast, and I'm Curtis Austin, and we are now on the When Christians Speak Talk Radio. We air every second Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. Won't you just tune in and welcome to When Christians Talk Radio, Bold and the Beautiful.
If it wasn't for God, I'd be weak. I wouldn't wake up from my sleep. I wouldn't have nothing to eat. I wouldn't be so unique. If it wasn't for God, I would lose it. I wouldn't live under a roof. I wouldn't be up in this booth. I wouldn't know He is the truth. If it wasn't for God, I would have been bold. The enemy would have taken my soul. But now I rise up and I surprise them like the day that He rose. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be up in these foreign cars on the way to my shows. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't have nada. I wouldn't be cold. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't have clothes. No shoes to cover my toes. No hat to cover my head. If it wasn't for God, I would have been. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be counted out. My family down and out. I'm blessed so without a doubt. Gotta make sure I shout it out. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Bold and Beautiful is a talk show designed to bring the Word of God to youth and young adults around the world and embolden them to live out loud for Jesus. Our vision is to see young people of the world rising up to take their rightful place as leaders and world changers.
I'm a young girl spitting that gospel. Last time I talked to God, He said, I got you. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And they try to act like they never knew you. But the devil can't do nothing to you. 'Cause the power, I give it to Him. The glory, I give it to Him. Forever, I give it to Him. And ever, I give it to Him. The power, I give it to Him. The glory, I give it to Him. Forever, I give it to Him. And ever, I give it to Him. The power, I give it to Him. The glory, I give it to Him. Forever, I give it to Him. And ever, I give it to Him.
Hello, family. Here we are again for another wonderful, bold, and beautiful episode with When Christians Speak Talk Radio. So, of course, I have my wonderful hosts with me, Reverend Curtis. Say what's up.
What's up? You know what time it is. We back at it. Like we never left.
And Reverend Novena.
Hello, everybody.
And then, of course, we have our wonderful special guest, Summer Mensah.
Hello.
Hey.
I know. How's it going, guys?
Yep, so we are excited for this episode. We are going to jump right in a moment with everything that is happening in this wonderful human being's life. We're so excited to hear from her. So many things have been happening. It's a joy. So I'm going to say not a prayer, but just a hey, Jesus, you're here. We're here. We're going to just dig right in. And we're just thankful, God, that you're with us and that you never leave us and you're with us even in this moment. So with that, Summer, you know what? I feel like maybe you should just start off with a song before we even get started. I feel like you should sing that.
Yes. Okay. Beyond what I can think, you go beyond my hopes and highest expectation. The love you showed on Calvary, forever, always pursuing me relentlessly. I cry out, please open up the heavens. Let me feel your shower of your presence.
Yes.
Every moment of each hour. Lord, take my hand. I'm so sorry. Cover me and take me beyond what I understand.
Girl, you better.
All right, man. Hey, look, man, I'll be at the nearest 7-Eleven with my trunk pop. You want to come through and get a sample of that? I got all that.
That must have been beautiful. Oh my God, you're such a butterfly. I can't.
Yes.
I can't.
Yes.
That was wonderful. So that was just a sampling of our wonderful Summer's ministry. She has been growing so much. Like, you would think she had been singing for, like, she just started singing, people. Like, this is not someone who's been singing since she was 3. Like, she just, this is just amazing. I love it. I love it. I love it. Love it. So we're also talking about at some point later, you know, she's putting out music that you can go out there and purchase. We will tell you how. But before we get into those specifics, Summer, you have recently gone on I'm going to call it a missions trip. It's not like missions like we typically think of missions, but you're with God and you went on a trip. That's a missions trip.
That's a good way to start it because now I'm all excited.
Oh, right.
It was.
Tell us all about it.
It was a mission for me, guys.
It was like, hello.
But it was like for other people, but it was a strong mission to let my eyes open to like how God is working, how God's working through you guys. I'm like, you guys are angels right now. Like that's what I'm seeing you guys as, and I'm like just servant, like however you want to define it, is I'm seeing God through people more, and that was more of. I also got to learn how He sees me, or how I should also present myself to other people. And I think like lots of teenagers, just kids go through. You get bullied. I don't know if anybody's dealt with, whether it's from family, friends, or bullies. You get the knowing of who you are beaten out of you at some point.
Oh wow!
And so, and it's like I can't say I suffered a big story, but it came. I'm like, oh yeah, why am I not looking at y'all? But it came, and I've just to give a to umbrella basically where I went coming into the trip, and it was a month-long trip I took. I guarded myself off, or no, I dismissed myself from the people who I thought were like cooler than me. I'm like, oh no, like just certain races. I was like, oh, they don't see me, or certain like guys. I was just like, no, they're not interested in talking to me.
Where did you go?
Where did I go? I went to Europe trip. I started in London, and I think I'll leave that part of the story there because a lot leading up to London and a lot leading after London was is just a big part of my journey.
And so let's be clear, when you bought the ticket, you were only supposed to stay how long?
1 week.
Yeah.
1 week.
That was a 1 week ticket. And you bravely went past the due date of that ticket.
Yeah. So let's say the prior information is I did a good amount of hard babysitting / nannying. And the parents compensated me well, and I think last year, if you follow my other stories about how God taught me just to break my fear of money, if anything, I'm just like, the world is my oyster. I'm not going to be scared to spend what I have. And I was also expecting, I'm expecting another amount to come. And so, and I was expecting that since summertime. So to say I knew, I'm going to give you guys
Hold up, you were expecting it since when?
Well, since the summertime.
Summertime!
Yeah.
Oh! That's her name, y'all, because it was summertime. God was doing something. Go ahead, girl. Go ahead.
Okay. But so I did an actual missions trip to the Dominican Republic. And after I left there, I just felt like an urge to speak languages. And I was just like, I'm gonna go travel soon to Europe. And that was just something always on my heart. And so I didn't know how it was gonna come, but it came by me. But also I knew, I was just like, I'm gonna have money. I'm gonna have some money's gonna come in some way. And I knew I this was like summertime of 2018. I was just picturing that the beginning of January 2019, I'd have something. And I didn't know it would come as the form of a job, but more so, I had also want, like, our family, like my uncle, he started like a scholarship for us, and so I started just claiming it. I was just like, I'm pretty sure I know that money is gonna be mine. Family members, this is not like this isn't a cocky thing. It was just, I'm talking about like God telling me I'm feeling that. And so, and it was for me to be able to get to this point of where I am right now. And so I did end up winning. I found out like beginning of January, and I'm like, oh, I have enough to travel. And so basically that's the beginning part. And leading up to this, I was also in lots of arguments, fighting with my my sister. She just straight up like that, and things were not aligned to where we needed to be. So we kept butting heads. And leading up to the trip, I was just like, I have enough. I really wanted to do this for a while, and Riley and I, my sister, we wanted to travel and possibly move out. And basically, I switched plans on her, and I was like, and this isn't good. Like, it was a very difficult time leading up to this. So this is not I'm gonna go explore type trip. This was an escape trip. Seriously,
Yeah,
I've
I've had to do that before.
So I did that, and first blessing, I bought the ticket for $150. That's the one-way ticket.
Really?
One-way trip from Baltimore to London. So that was
$150.
hello. Yeah, it was a round trip of $300, and so I also made it. Going in, I said, I'll be okay if I have to lose this $150, because it's just perspective,
right?
And that's what I ended up doing. And so that was kind of like the lead up. Why did I pick London? It was, for some reason, I wanted to see the countryside, which I still I haven't done. So I need to do a countryside type of trip. But like,
who'd you travel with?
Myself. Like, it was
London by yourself.
By myself.
Don't know nobody in London.
And no, I did not. And I was fully confident. Why was I confident, guys?
Why were you confident?
Why were you confident?
Because I've had enough experience. Honestly, I think I've kind of been a girl with a lot of drive, but I've had enough experiences lately where I'm like, God has me. Like, I'm just like,
That's
Stepping out the boat.
That's called confidence.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Should I just go lead in, or do you want to ask?
Okay. So we know you got on a plane by yourself to go across the water.
The pond, they say over there.
Yes, across the pond.
6 hours. The 6 hour pond.
And so when you got to, like, so what was the plan?
The plan. So, I wanted to. It was an escape trip. So I said, I wanted to initially go to a hotel and just find a place by myself, but hotels are kind of expensive. It's like, okay, maybe Airbnb, but I was kind of scared of that too. And then, you know what I was even more scared of? A hostel. Let me define a hostel to you. It's like a college dorm on steroids, because you're sharing bunk room dorm, like with possibly maybe 4 bunk beds in a room, or like 21 bunk beds in a room.
That's strangers from every part of the world.
Yeah, like sometimes it's all girls, most times it's co-ed. And so the first time I heard that from my sister, she was the one who was more proponent for it. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. No. So, of course, and coming from like just Black culture, you just don't share certain things like that. We just don't do stuff like we do not do that.
That's true.
We don't, honestly.
So I will say,
unless you've been where I've been, well, I ain't gonna tell you that though. Later on.
Oh yeah. Okay, gotcha.
That was by force, not choice. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, go ahead. Thank God for Jesus. Deliverance.
Yeah, amen. But why was that the choice? The one I chose.
Hostel.
Yeah, the hostel. Because it was cheapest, and I was allowing. I was like, if I felt an urge to stay longer, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna try to save my money. And when I went there the first day, and mind you, it was a hard first day. I was carrying a rock on my back, just everything in my backpack, and I didn't go with the thought that I'd be a backpacker. But by the end, I turned into a backpacker, and I got really efficient at traveling. So I was like, okay, go Summer.
How'd that first night go?
It was transformative. Like the first part of the day going there, I was anxious. I saw the royal castle, and I was trying to figure out how to use the subway. It was so confusing, guys. If you want to go to your London, hit me up so I can give you like the tips, or just like where to look, what to get used to looking for, what signs to get used to looking for, just like in life. But like it's funny. I would say going into these trips, it's funny how people go, but nobody talks about like that they went and why it was difficult, and giving the tips to the next people. Nobody really does that. But either way, the day was difficult, but I got there and I settled in, and I faced my first fear, met a guy in our eight bedroom mixed dorm room, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be terrible. Summer, you shouldn't have done this. This is not how you were raised at all. I was just thinking of my mom. I'm like, she wouldn't be like disappointed or anything, but it's just like the quality you're used to, at least.
Right.
Yeah. Whatever. But I met him. He was a German guy. He was like around my age, like a little younger, I think. And he was quiet and like polite. And so that was like my first introduction. I was just like, okay, Summer, we did it. Like we faced that big hump of like, you're gonna sleep in a room with guys. And honestly, coming into this, guys, I'm not trying to like make it sound like this was like a willy-nilly thing. Like, I know you're in rooms with strangers. As a girl, you need to be mindful. And I'm not supporting mindlessness, but I hope I'm telling the story of somebody who had a whole lot of confidence in God. And I'm hoping I'm telling a story of somebody who can say God showed up for her 10 times over. Like,
Amen.
Yeah, for real. So what stopped me and kind of changed the entire course is a person I met. And the circumstances I met this person was I was getting ready to pack up. In the exact hostel I'm talking about, I said, you know what? I know I met this new German guy. He was cool, and I met these Korean girls, but you know what? I deserve a hotel, honestly. I said, I was just like, okay, if I'm here to relax, I'm gonna at least relax today, and I'm not gonna feel any shame for saying, you know what? I changed my mind, and like I give credit to parents, Treva and Francis Mensah, for teaching me if it's not good and it's not worth it to you, you don't gotta pay for it. So go or just. Or get your money back, or do what you got to do. And so that's what actively what I was going to do. I got my what I was going to do in my head. I was walking out with pride. I was like, Summer, don't be embarrassed. Get your hair looking nice. Why not put on the makeup and just start feeling good. And as soon as I'm doing that, mind you, I'm looking good. Then an Australian person, not bad looking, a guy walks in, and he's like a new roommate, and I'm just like, oh, hi, and I'm like, okay, and he's like, hi, and you could tell he's kind of friendly, and he's having trouble with his locker, and so like I'm just kind of helping him out, and so we just kind of start the banter. So how any new person you meet, you can kind of feel out if conversation can flow, and I could tell, like we could equally tell like conversation was easily flowing, and so I was just like, well, okay, I was gonna leave, and so it wasn't like I was like immediately attracted to him, but it was just a person of interest who caught my eye more than anybody else, and that's like that's the first move of God that I saw, no doubt, because.
You're ready to go.
Because I was going. You guys, like, that does not happen where you get the door slammed in your face. And so I was happy with that. And so we basically, and I know this must be going everywhere, but my goal when I was there, I said, I'm going to let whatever happens. And I've never really allowed myself to do that, even in my everyday life. I'm living that way more now, but
You're a planner?
yeah, yes,
A list, very goal oriented, very structured. Make a list.
and yeah,
Check it off.
like at least in my head, I think I am.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of messy sometimes, but I was just gonna let that happen, and under those circumstances, that's not the circumstances you would say I'm gonna let go. But I saw him walk. I feel weird because his name is Brandon. That's the easiest way to reference him because he was like my friend throughout the whole thing. So I saw Brandon, and he kind of helped guide where the next thing would go.
step.
Yeah.
So then this meeting, which I do believe was a God meeting, because I believe he was a catalyst to be able to allow you to have more experiences and then to guide you even along how to travel.
Yeah,
like
for
and where to
real.
go. So I'm going to just jump in and say, because I know this story. I'm going to jump in and say that after conversations with Brandon, she kind of basically tagged along to what his travel plan was.
Funny because she was going to the hotel.
She was about to go to the hotel, but God was like, "Let me
order
That's
your
not.
stuff.
That's not the
And she
trip.
was about to head home. What
That's
we
not the trip we're
gonna
about to have."
Yeah, I would have been home.
Yeah,
easily.
after
I did
1
not-
week round trip ticket, but
And he'd have been gone.
He just showed up, huh?
He did, and that connection and spark was there for a reason, so that you would make that kind of decision, because you would make that decision for someone who,
Just there.
right?
I think
So-
even with the name Brandon, I think that kind of settled her down a little bit too. Okay, got it.
Inside joke.
Inside joke. Sorry, y'all. So she connects with Brandon. He becomes her travel buddy. And how many days did you spend in London?
A total 2 weeks. So that's a lot. That's a lot of time. So when it comes to the first week, that was my exploration time, and so I'll say I give credit to him. I give credit to him. He really was my travel guide in understanding like how the real world works. Like even clubbing, he's just like, so Summer, why do you think people go to clubs? And I'm like, well, but me never really going to a club, like good girl over here. I just never had a real reason, but I always wanted to, but never had the right crew. He was my right crew, ironically, and so he's like, why do you think they go? And I'm like, to dance, but then I'm like, also possibly to hook up. He's like, yeah, the second answer is people go like looking to find people to hook up with, and so he's just like, that was when I was just kind of saying. I was just saying like, oh, I'd like to go clubbing, and I was saying how I don't want to be like approached by certain people who I'm not interested in. So he's just like warning me like that's what's gonna happen, and I will say he was a little bit. We both were 21 at the time, but he had traveled a lot more. So if anything, I just to give the full preliminary run of who he was, highly respectful, did not try anything with me. If anything, was not like. We showed that we liked each other, but it didn't go to that direction.
It was friendship.
Yeah, it was for a girl who ended up liking him in the end. It was very obvious that he was sent by God because he did not try a single thing, and if anything, rejected me in the end. So that's how the story is. So I'm just gonna say, so I was just like, okay, God. So that was very much a narrative running through. I was just like, thank you for this person. I'm bouncing around the country, and also I kind of like him, and what's going on? But
He was sent for.
but yeah, there's a whole lot more to the story with that. But so I was there for 2 weeks, bouncing around different hostels, and he's like, I'm gonna go to Vienna next, and I'm like. And so constantly he's just like, are you going to go? Do you think you're going to go? And like, it's up to you. And I'm like, yeah, likely I will. And so that was causing me to look up flights last minute. You guys, Europe flights are cheap. I had like maybe 2 to 3 days prior, and I was able to find like a flight for $90 from just, and that's in euro, like in US dollars. And so that's where I traveled, and that's where I also met my next person who was definitely God representing. Like, and I will say up to that point, like I met lots of people. at the end I can say like I had a list of over 50 people. I just wrote down names of people I met who like I enjoyed their company and just talked to. Yeah, well, yeah, like after I kind of like thought about everything that happened, but through that time I just met people who were so kind, and I'd like to get into later just about the personalities I saw that were teaching me the lessons that of who I am. But in Vienna, I had met up with a new person who would direct the next trip I go to. While like Brandon, he had to go on a different route, like a different trip, and I was by myself, and I'm like, okay, well, what am I gonna do? Solo traveling, and somebody picked up there. Should I go on?
Other person. Okay. So between London and Vienna, and I don't know if you could break it up in this manner, but can you recall in the London-Vienna leg of your trip a God moment or a God lesson, like, this is God and this is the lesson?
Yeah, and I'd like to, like, I had a few and I'd like to bring those out. I think the first one was with that original German guy I'd met. He was quiet, and Brandon had specifically said, he's so quiet, like painfully quiet, like I can't talk to him. And then when he had said that, I had just finished having like an actually deep conversation with him, and I was like, oh, God, let us get that deep. And like we didn't even talk about God, but we talked about more so purpose. And he had made a funny point. So of course I'm in music, and I'd always see this guy reading a book and off to himself, and he would mention how like, yeah, it's fun, it's nice to travel, but if you don't have anybody to do it with, it's kind of off. So he wasn't having the best time. And so we got into the conversation of just what he does in his free time, and he's just like, oh, I like to write lyrics, and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, okay. And I could tell he was trying to like understand who I was, because I could tell he was a bit judgmental of me. Like, I said I did music, but I guess he wanted to see like how real I was about it. And I liked this comment he made. He's a white German guy, and he's just like, and I like listening to like Aretha Franklin and all these people, like, and him like, and he's just like, here I am, this white guy, like, what gives me the right to like listening to that? And I'm like, well, I like listening to Frank Sinatra, so it's okay. And so that kind of broke the tension, and that got us to like a deeper point to talk about like specifically an issue he was battling with, being scared to write his own music. He was doing a lot of like research on how to be a good songwriter, but not actually writing his own stuff. And so I was just like, give yourself the chance. I said, I think you should probably give yourself a chance to do something really crazy that's fully you, and make it terrible, and say it's terrible, but it's fully you. And then he's just like, well, yeah, I did do that. Like, I looked at something I wrote a long time ago, and I was like, oh, that's actually kind of good. And so I just saw that I had like tapped in to something, to something he was tripped up about. And I'm like, okay. And so we ended the conversation, and like to us millennials, whoever, like, I know even older adult age, you have awkward conversations, and the conversation started out awkward. Like, I was just like, should I go now? I'm like, you know, when you feel like you're like, this conversation is dying, but like God leads out what he wants to happen, and he did, and to the point where I was like, okay.
See, that's the beautiful thing about God and his sovereignty, because this is a young lady who is in Virginia, or from Virginia, right? From Virginia, but she ends up across the pond, you know, and she ended up meeting one person. Well, she stays in a place because she chooses to stay in a hostel as opposed to stay in a hotel. So with that choice, it led her to cross paths with one person, which would ultimately cause her to cross paths with the next person. Now let me just say this, how God is just very strategic in how he does intertwine our lives, and he puts the puzzle pieces together for us, and those puzzle pieces make the picture in our lives, the picture being our purpose, much more clearer than it was previous of us meeting the person that he connected us with at that moment. I mean, I'm just amazed at God and his handiwork and how he works. So you can look at the stars, you look at the sky, you look at the firmament, and you say, well, God is good and God can create all them things. But when you start to see how he intertwines lives to bring out the greater good and purpose. It's awesome. It's awesome. And I'm seeing this all in your story, all in your story. So I'm just eager to hear even more. And I'm just like go ahead. Tell it, girl.
And I can attest to that. Like, I just got a better perspective is that God just let me live like our entire lives in that month. Because most of us, we go, like, people go their whole lives and thinking they have no purpose and that people don't come into their lives for a reason. But, like, I was, like, passed gently along by each person, by each welcoming smile, or people saying, oh, where are you from? What do you do? Oh, I hear an American accent, blah, blah, blah. Like, just talking. And I was just like, oh, this is what you're doing hardcore. And so I'll jump to the next story. Like, I will say, I think this talk is all about people and how God is in people and how he showed himself. Like, how am I able to say that I met God and God was with me the entire time when I haven't seen the one image of God as we think.
Right.
Yet I was fully aware of him. He was in my head, but I also, through my interactions, he was there. So that gives me, like, the ability to say God is in people. And he's in people who have never, I don't think I met a single person who confessed or said, I'm a Christian, or I believe in God. If anything, Brandon, he was like, oh, no, we go to church for Easter. No, I'm not really religious. I don't really believe in God. So I'm like, you have me traveling for an entire month with somebody who's an atheist or with all these people. But yeah, and so I'm just like, man, like, God is way deeper than we think. Than just it's like it's in the fiber of our beings more so. And that's why you don't have to be scared of certain people. And that's what we're living right now. We're really scared to venture out. And so that brings my next person. Brandon had went off his own way, and I was in Vienna. This is just this is a super cool story. This is like the movie part. Like, so this also could sound like a movie, but that's the day where I was like, dang God, you had me going through an entire movie. I was in Vienna and I met a girl from South Korea. Her name was Sahi. She spoke good English, and I noticed her because she had good style. I was like, girl, I like your clothes. I'm like, you're cute. And she's just like, thank you. And so she's just very kind. And I found, like, I don't know, I've always gelled well with just South Koreans, just Asians in general for some reason.
What was she doing in Vienna?
She's just traveling. She's by herself with a big old suitcase.
Like you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, with a backpack.
Yeah, but she was intense, but she was on a mission. She was just going. And so we had crossed paths, and it was my last day. I had not booked my next hostel, guys. I was just like, God, I haven't felt led to book anywhere next. If I need to stay extra time in Vienna, then I will. But I was just like, all I know is I'm by myself. I'd like to see the countryside, so I'd like to ride a train somewhere. Like, I've been in the city this entire time. And I need to find the next place where I'm going to decide to stay. And I had happened to run into her. We had disconnected, and I thought she left, and I happened to see her, and she's just like, oh, I'm leaving today. And she's like, would you want to go get coffee with me? And that leads into the best, I think, conversation of the trip, because I know she saw Christ in me. Like, she finished, she was just like, wow, you're really easy to talk to. And if anything, that's not me bragging. I'm saying I was genuinely, like, listening, and I was willing to share about God. The only thing I talked about God was just, like, I was kind of sharing my own testimony with leaving. I had, like, how I left school for a bit and the things I've been learning. And I said, I can only say I'm here because God, whether you believe him or not, I believe in him or not, but I didn't push him on her. And so if anything, I was listening to her story, how, like, just life, how Korea started as it's a much newer country and much poorer. Like, they have good flavor and good soups, but that's because they couldn't afford to have, like, the real food, so they had to learn to flavor the water well. And I was learning about how her dad was fighting for democracy and was in jail for, like, years. And I was just hearing about all these random things. And so I was learning about her, and we built a very strong connection. And so then I was just like, God, I knew he was leading up to this. And I was just like, so she mentions I'm going to Budapest on a train in a couple hours. And I was like,
Budapest?
Yeah. And I was like, wait a second. So I said I don't have a hostel to stay in, and I wanted to ride a train today. She's going on a train, and we're hitting it off really well. And I just happened to run into her that morning, and so the conversation ends, and I'm like, hey, this might sound very forward, but we're talking about being forward. I'm like, would you mind if I tag along with you? And she's just like, honestly, I'd really like that. And it was the
connection.
Yeah, it was.
It was called Summertime.
Yeah.
Come on, God.
And it was like, and I tell you, I was putting my heart on the line. It was like I was like, you see those big gestures you see in movies where like, will you marry me? I felt like she could easily have rejected me, and I could have not had a place to stay, and I would have just had to stay the same place I was. But it worked out, and so that leads to the movie part is I have 45 minutes to make it back all the way to my hostel to get my luggage, go meet her back at the train station, and I'm the entire length of the city away. Tell me how. All I can say is God gave me Superman speed to get from our coffee meeting place, take the underground where I have no idea how to navigate the city. I go get my stuff and I make it back to her. I go meet the conductor and I'm like, is this going to Budapest? I'm out of breath, guys. Like, and I'm pretty sure I'm already 2 minutes late. So the train should have already took off. I was the only person getting on the train. He's just like, Budapest. And he didn't speak much English. And I'm like, can I go on without having a ticket yet? He's just like, Budapest, go. And I'm like, okay. And so in the end, I was able to get a ticket on the train. And I was like, please accept my credit card or and it all worked. And I made my way. And the beautiful...
Pause.
Yeah.
Is this the girl who was thinking about the life change with her career?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you gave her the advice about...
Yeah.
See, she be missing major...
I know.
Because I know the story, so I'm like, wait a minute, she's not telling...
So tell us about that conversation.
So, and I'm gonna let her tell it, but she's missing a major moment. So God connects us not just so that we can, because first of all, connection is important and we're supposed to be connected, but also so that we can speak life into people. So she spoke life into the first young man about following his dream to be a songwriter and to just kind of let the preconceptions he had about what it took to be a songwriter go and just be yourself and just write. This second person. Because I thought you were going to get there, and the story, she ain't tell the whole story, y'all.
Well, let's just say I was talking about how my way was made through her. So, like, I had a place to stay because we shared a room that I did not plan that was going to come. So that's the moral of that, where I was going with that line. But in that coffee spot, that's another side specific story that she was a statistics major. She was getting her master's, and she felt like, should I keep traveling? I don't know. And she brought up a specific thing is like, I want to be good to the world, or I want to be worth something to the world. And I think that's seen as very important in their culture for sure. And I said, don't you realize that by you being alive, like you're already good to the world? And so she was just like, oh. She was genuinely like, I never thought of it that way, and you could tell that got her heart. And I was just talking. I wasn't trying to necessarily to say go leave school, because in the end I found out she decided to stay. But I knew where her heart was saying. She knew she didn't want to stay, and she knew that she wanted to keep traveling. And I told her she was worried. Where she was telling me how she was admiring the arts, and she said, I love how creative you can be, and I was kind of saying, like, you can even be creative in statistics, and she acknowledged that too. And I think she really liked, and I brought up that you can be creative even in meeting people, and you could tell that that's just where her heart was. And I'm like, and she said, so since I can talk to you really well, like, what do you think I should do? And I was flattered that she asked me, and like, I already knew like what the answer was. And I'm like, I'm just listening to your heart, and you know that you need to, you probably maybe should wait on starting school. She made her own decision, but I could tell that I was I was definitely a soundboard for her to like bounce that idea off of and at least hear what she knew was in her heart. And I was glad to at least be a person who had the discernment to see what she was saying. Because if I was any younger, I probably wouldn't have been like, I would have been maybe like fickle, or I would have been like, I don't know, maybe you should do, but I could read what her spirit was saying. And that's where that links again, that God is on the playing levels of all of our lives. It's not about rising to be religious and go to church, because he obviously
cares about everything.
he obviously wanted to work in her if he got me to talk to her.
Right.
Absolutely.
So
that reminds me, I'm gonna jump in, because I feel like this is what this story is. Her whole travel story, well, her whole life, but this travel story specifically. And I don't know if I might have shared this before, but there was a minister, and he talks about a dream he had where he wakes up in the dream and he's in a car and everything is black and white. The whole world is black and white. And he gets picked up in this dingy car, and he looks around the world and people are miserable, and all they're doing is complaining about what's wrong. And God, and he's like, in the dream, he's like, God, what is wrong? Like, what is happening? Everything is black and white, and everyone's miserable, everyone's judging and complaining. The next night he has another dream. Everything is still black and white. And the church, I'm using air quotes, y'all can't see it, but the church has come up with all these programs to kind of fix people, the people who were complaining the first night, but everyone is still black and white. So it's like, oh, take this 12 steps into this, and take this perfecting class, and take this and this, but people are still black and white. He wakes up the third night and he gets picked up in a bright colored car. I can't remember the name, the color of it, but it was a bright colored car. And he was like, okay, we fancy today, so what's happening? And so the driver then starts rolling down the window, and it says, you're a mighty man of valor, you're a worthy woman, and when he does that, people start turning colors. And so when the person starts turning colors, then they bump into somebody, and that person turns a color.
Yeah, that's it.
And so that's what your story was. So when I hear it, I hear you touching someone and they turn color. And then they touch someone and they turn color. And it's not about, am I going to do the sinner's prayer and accept Jesus? It's just about showing God's love and having that connection.
And it does play out like that, because see, the reality is we all as people, like before we have met Christ and come into a relationship with him, we can honestly look back in hindsight and see where God's hand was working through somebody else to show us how it really was, but we couldn't recognize it, but we knew something was different at that moment. Yeah. And it brings me to, I wasn't going to say nothing about this because, the Bible says sometimes don't let your left hand know what your right hand doing. But so I'm at the grocery store right before I came to meet up with you all. And I was in line. I was going to actually go in line 3. Because only had one person, right? But me being me, I talk to everybody, anybody. So I stop. I see somebody put right. Yeah. I see somebody putting in some drinks into the cooler, right? I said, "Oh, you missed one." I missed one, so that made me get by line 4. And then I saw it was one person in line 4, so I said, "Well, let me just go in line 4." So I entered in line 4, and as I'm entering line 4, the young lady that's in front of me, she has a basket full of stuff already in bags, but she has her money in hand, but they start taking Lunchables. She started giving Lunchables back because she didn't have enough money for all the groceries. It came up to $80, and she didn't have enough money. So she was putting Lunchables back. So instantly, I know that this woman ain't eating no Lunchables. Them want some kids. So I asked her, I said, how much do you need? I said, are you putting it back because you need more money? She was like, yeah, why? I say, how much do you need? She said, well, I only have this and this. I said, how much is that? She said, $70. And I say, well, how much is it? She said, $80. And I said, don't put it back. Ma'am, can you put that back in the bag for her, please? And I gave her the $10 and it came to $80.05, and she was like, oh, thank you, you didn't have to do that. I said, no, it ain't me. God sent me in this line to be right here to give you the $10 for what you needed. So it ain't from me, it's from God. That's right. And then the lady in the cash register said, sir, you made my night tonight. That's it. All that was God, because it was God that's showing himself that I put people specifically in spots to show you how real I am. That's the whole point. Forget about what I did. This is the fact of what God did. I put people specifically in places to show you how real I am.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So good.
Mm-hmm. Turning people colors.
And so how real I am, I think I need to like. So I'll close out the Budapest story, but I'll jump back to London because that's where I met a lot of people, and I think I got more. That's where my lesson of like your self-worth came, and I like what you're talking about. Make me real, like real to you. I think with the people, he needed to show me that he had me first of all, and that like I'm in safe situations. So I feel like, okay guys, I was not doing, if anything, I was just hanging out. So like I'd be with people at bars and they were like, hey, do you want to go to a club? And I'm like, okay, I'll tag along with you guys. So I'd be with groups of people, girls and guys, and so I'm like, honestly, I've never, why not if we're having a good time? And so I go, and then sometimes I find myself out at night so I found myself out at night and with a group of guys. I was the only girl, and like this is just factual, so this makes you probably like saying like so Summer, you're the only girl with a group of like 3 other guys and you don't know and you met within that week. And I'm like, yeah. And you found yourself ordering chicken shawarma at 12 a.m. or whatever, and then I was waiting for food, and so I found myself by myself at times, and I was like, oh, so these are the other people who come out at night, and I didn't necessarily see any like prostitutes, but I saw some people with lots of piercings, dark clothing, some fights maybe was trying to break out, either way. And I'm just saying, like, God had me calm first of all. I was calm through it to the point where I was just like, if my parents knew or if I said this to somebody, they'd freak out. But like, it's a difference between talking about it. And I think this is like something I'd like to stress to anybody listening is that like, you don't know. Going through it is different than like talking about it. And I think we're living in a world that does a lot of talking about. In the news, we're talking about we're in a world of a lot of stereotypes. And specifically, I think stereotypes are ruining the opportunity for God to work. And specifically, God put me in a very, like, a stereotypical situation where, girl, you can get snatched, you can get raped, anything can happen, and I'm aware of those things, but God didn't have my mind in that. And he had people, genuine guys, like, one guy, I was, so the group had split. I was with this new person who I met within hours before, and he was just like, well, I'll make sure I'll get you an Uber. The taxis are way expensive at this time, and so at the time I didn't even have money, and so it hit his phone and died, and everything had lined up to where the Uber found us just in time, and I was just like, everything lined up. And I found my way back, and like the trip kept going, but like if anything, I got this for you. If you really start letting like faith happen, life gets.
Say it again. Faith happen. Good God Almighty.
If you really start letting faith happen, life
that
gets.
That was for me.
Life gets fun.
Hello.
Yeah. And I'm like, so that's why I'm getting more giddy lately, because like I'm letting God sink into like just my mind and what I imagine for myself, and I'm like, well, I'd like to be this person, and I'd like to be like this kind of rule breaker, and God's like, girl, why not? And it's like,
in the body language.
And it's like, so it's like an equation. So if we say God took care of everything and grace has everything, yet we still live like in fear, like we have to do something right for God, like that's not how we were designed to live. So I'm seeing.
She better preach.
We've been talking about it. We don't want it.
So he showed me
relationship.
Relationship is real, Reverend Curtis. Like it's about like, and he's trying to teach me and show us about like dominance. Like I'm like dominating the world as we're supposed to. So
dominion.
Yes. And so I can at least say, okay, I'm gonna call it out. I tried, and I was fully conscious, I was for the first time under the influence of marijuana. And then home dude Brandon, he was just like, okay, well, everybody else is doing it, and he was just like asking like, oh, would you want to try a pill or anything? And I was like, I was just like, honestly, okay. And then so he decided, he's like, okay, just go for like a half of it. And I was just like, all right. And even went to the route of cocaine. What in the world do you go that far? And it's like, and I was just like, the entire time and I want to be careful with my words. Mm-hmm. And each time it was just like one time where I went with the motto, I'm with God, and I said, God gave me the okay to try whatever was necessary. Or not try whatever was necessary, but our hearts were lined up. And I'm not promoting anything, but I'm saying that God even went that far. For an experimental young 20-something who was like, okay, I'll try it. And my dad, and I was fully out of my mind when my dad was like, Summer, make sure you don't try anything, because people lace these things with like things that can kill you. Like, I'm a firefighter, and I've specifically picked up people who've died because it was their Molly was laced with something lethal. And I'm in a club in Germany, and I said, okay, because a guy I like said, hey, do you want to try something? Okay, why did God's grace allow me to do something so irresponsible? And why did he allow me to be in the mindset to talk with him while it was happening?
Realness.
I hope you get, I like Dan Muller. He said, he said this, and he was like, don't listen to what I'm not saying. Listen to what I'm saying, please. Is that I'm not promoting doing these things, and I don't see myself as a liver of these things. And to these kids, if anything, if you're a kid listening to this, I'm trying to tell you, like, God is there for your wandering mind. For your mind is like, and like if you. And specifically, like, I've been in understanding of, like, why do some people go to drugs? I don't know why, all those reasons, but, like, sometimes it is for that escape. Like, most times, a lot of people just don't know how to escape. And I'm saying, God is there with you if you try it. God is there with you to prevent you, because he is the escape, first of all.
Come on.
But, like...
He's so much bigger.
It's so much bigger.
It's so much bigger.
If you try
so I love Summer so much, even for her bravery and telling her testimony and telling her story. Because sometimes, listen, y'all, we get real holy and we don't even want to say what's real and the things that we've done, and the things that we've done, knowing that we know God and we still do stuff, right?
Come on now.
And so this is just such a beautiful moment. So we're gonna take a moment, right? Because God is way bigger than we think he is.
Yes.
And it said that he came to the world not to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved.
Yes.
So wherever you are is okay, right? So I think that's the big moral.
That's the point.
Wherever you are is okay. If you can't outrun God's grace, you can't make a decision bad enough that God's grace can't cover it.
Exactly.
The blood covers everything. And if you want to make a decision that could potentially be unhealthy and have a conversation with God through it, he'll be with you in that moment too. That's right. You're okay.
Yeah.
And then, on top of that, like she said, why would God grace? Because he's there to even grab you and bring you even closer through those things in those times, because I know for myself, and those that have been listening to our show since we started, y'all know Reverend Curry wasn't Reverend Curry one time. Lord, you know what I'm saying, right? But by the grace of God, why did he keep me through those things? Because it was for such a time as this.
Exactly.
So with that being said, we was talking earlier, and I'll just say this, because in fact, we're gonna give a shout out to Blueprint Tees, right? Because that's one of our hosts' husband's t-shirt line.
Absolutely.
And so check them out on Instagram and IG. But listen, this is one of the things that I probably want a t-shirt made. Your transparency translates to your transformation. Because people can't know you've been transformed if you don't be transparent about where you've been from, where you were at.
That's the truth.
Come on
right.
now.
That's
Come
right.
on.
That's the truth.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I like to get out the way is that, like, this was not a dark period.
Right.
Like, so, like, I'm scared to even get into the graphics of, okay, God wants me to get in. Like,
Yeah.
like, why hold back?
Come on
but,
now.
like, if we're talking about rising to the next level, and, like, I'd like to talk about specifically when I was under, like, on, like, the half a pill of Molly. I was like, okay, well, I was given the warning that, like, okay, it starts, you're gonna have highs and then lows, and I'm like, okay, all right, and I was having my fine time, but I felt like my spirit was lifting, kind of like I was feeling raised out of my body a bit. So I felt me, but I just felt lighter, and I was floating, and I don't know if anybody else has that experience with that, but like, why did I feel closer with God? And this is getting into the talk of that we are spirits in these human bodies, but that, like, there are frequencies and higher levels that, okay, I think this is why people might go down the rabbit hole with drugs, and I think this is why I was so okay, because God, who is the highest high, like the highest high you could feel, was guiding me through it to the point where he's just like, enjoy me. So I'm not...
I get it. So I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong though, so there are, okay, so we're designed in God's image. We're designed with a hunger for him, right? But if we are experiencing something, maybe through alcohol or through Molly or whatever we're experiencing something that is similar to or akin to a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait a minute, this is kind of cool. It is the falsehood of what really is, but it does tap into and open something.
And you have to be very careful. And I'm just saying, that's why I'm not in a repenting, like, oh, I made a mistake. Now I'm in a, like, I was with God in it. And he's just like, you knew me and you were talking to me the whole time. Like, I think you can even, it's possible to connect with God through those means, but you do need that proper guiding. And I think these are the higher levels of spirituality that we don't talk about and that I'm not even fully skilled in, but I do know that God was trying to lead me to some place to understanding of that.
I understand where you're coming from, because I mean, for now, I am a preacher, you know, and I've been preaching since I was about 20 years now, because I'll be 43 this year, so I've been preaching since I was 22. But I remember when I was in the world, and I'm talking about when I was in the world for real, like, I mean, some real dangerous nonsense type of living, not just to myself, but to other people. But I used to, you know, get drunk when I drank Fifth of Remy. I'm just gonna be honest. I mean, drank Fifth of Remy by myself. Drank a 6-pack of Guinness Stout early in the morning before that, you know. But then when I started drinking, because God, when he really wants you, he pulls on you even in those moments.
Yes.
Right? So we be out in the
You act like a high can't stop the power of God. It cannot.
Yeah,
You're trying to escape, can't escape him.
He say, I'll be out there, and next thing I know, I done took that last one or whatever, and I'd be like, yo, we gotta give our life to God. I'm telling you, because the Lord he coming back. They say when the moon get red, like see how the moon up there like that, but it get red, like hey, see, we ain't trying to hear that right now. You gonna blow our high, Joe? Like nah, for real, because God, I'm telling you, God, like nah, y'all got to give yourself to me. And I started preaching, but didn't know that God was just really trying to show me I was called for something greater. It's just that I was using the lesser means to get to the higher power.
Come on, man. That's
you know what I'm saying? So basically, again, like she said, we're not being proponents of using drugs or drinking or being intoxicated. But what we're saying is that God has a way to reach wherever you at to show you how real he is.
There's no place he won't go for you.
No place.
There's no place he won't go. Says, if I make my bed in hell,
I ain't here there.
And I tell you, like, this is, so we're talking about how God was manifesting himself. I got to talk about spiritual warfare, and like the war manifests itself in people too. And in that moment, So this is where the advice of Brandon comes. He's just like, okay, Summer, people come to hook up at clubs. I was dealing with a person who was rather aggressive. He wasn't like forceful with me, but he kept coming where I was just like, no, thank you. I'm just by myself. I'm with my group. And while I was like in the high of it all, and I was at peace, I was fine. And I was talking with God. He kept coming. And if anything, like, man, I'm not scared to sound crazy because, like, the things that go on in your own mind. Mm-hmm. Like, if anybody really knew your own mind, you're like, you feel scared. Like, and I'm trying to be I am your liaison or your advocate for the scared you who's like, that's the real you, who you're like, because in that time, you're like, am I tripping out? Whatever. But I felt, I was just like, this person kept being aggressive to the state of me simply talking to God. And I was just like, and I found that it kept coming every time I kept acknowledging God in the moment. He kept coming in. And I was just like, I think somebody's trying to stop that connection even in the club. Like, why can't it happen there? Like, just like it can happen in our job, and we say somebody's messing with me on my job, or somebody's messing with me at school. Like, let's get real about
it can happen
everywhere.
Absolutely.
So I think I was sent as I was a journalist, and this was like a mission trip for me. But like to say God is everywhere, spiritual warfare is everywhere, but God, it reigns everywhere, and like it was not. I don't see warfare as like something to stop me. I see it as more so something like to make him shine more, and or like redirect me, because I know he is still in control of it all. So we can leave the topic of because even I'm uncomfortable talking about this, and I'm like, what people are going to listen to this, and like church family, but like I even as a young me, I want for us all to be liberated, and I think that's what we're all here talking about, and all here for, and to really tap in. So if I can be an advocate for that, and that's all I'm ever, like, I hope nobody gets my words wrong, that's all I'm trying to be an advocate for right now.
Say what you said earlier. Say,
like, with
don't hear
what Dan Moeller said.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Don't listen to what I haven't said or what I'm not saying. Yeah. So
listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So in Jesus.
Because for real,
you want to say something? Because I'm thinking you're 22 years old, and I've known you for almost half your life, pretty much. And I remember when I was close to your age, I was 24 years old before I even turned around and had a relationship with Christ. And I think about the things that I did, and the main thing I was real good at is covering up. I knew right from wrong. I knew how to look right in front of people, but I never had like this authentic relationship. Then I'm talking, with anybody, because I wanted to be all things to all people. And when I was with the party people, I'd party with the party people. When I went to church, I knew how to clean it up and look like but until I had that real encounter with God, so all the stuff that you're saying, it doesn't sound crazy to me. It just took me longer to realize that I'm one person. I'm a whole person.
I am wherever I am.
That's it. And nobody has a heaven nor a hell to put me in.
Right.
Hello? So I have to be aware of all of this that's inside of me, because that's who I am, And it's up to the people outside of me to figure it out. Because
I know that's right.
I might be too loud for this person, or too nice for this person, or not strong enough for this person. But I realize in myself, it's taken me 50 years to realize I am enough. And people get concerned.
Say that again. I am enough.
Because who is I? Who am I? I am. He lives in me. And he and I are one.
Yeah.
So there's many facets of me, but I am still one.
Absolutely.
Because he lives in me. And all of this that I'm hearing is you are continuously becoming. At 22, I am continuously becoming.
At my age, you
Because he didn't drop that number.
at my age.
Yeah.
But it's a continual process. But the root of all of that is Him.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. Like, I am.
Yeah. And thank you for saying that. And it's just, I just said is just a yes you have to say to accepting it. And I think that's where I am right now is like accepting the things I know. Like you can hear God's voice, and I've been hearing His voice, and like you have good support around you, and that's help. And it's really, I think I'm at a point of just saying like, yes, God.
Yes.
And like saying
she
like,
says it, yes.
and just
experience with Him.
and just I think accepting. So faith comes by Him, but I feel that it's also a choice. It is a choice to have faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where I am, is I'm teetering a bit because I see Him leading me into areas, like even this Sunday I have a performance, and it's, the thing is, I've been performing for 10 years, but I've learned to use music, or I've learned to memorize stuff. But like, He hasn't really allowed me to memorize anything. He hasn't allowed me to make the right music, like to make music to read off of. And so I've been panicking. I've had my panic states throughout this week, and I'm like, God, but like you said I'm a good performer. I know I'm a good performer, but they are not going to see that.
The same way.
Well, no,
The same way He showed up for you in your
Budapest.
Germany. That same God that sent people before you, or He's gonna be the same God when you perform. Or when you just share Him on Sunday.
It's gonna be beautiful. How God gonna use you. Or you standing. Just what you said. Like faith is a choice too, and faith happens. And then you're beginning to allow yourself to live in that state where faith happens. So basically, when you step on that stage, you're letting faith happen because you're saying, God, I'm gonna believe you in this moment. I'm gonna believe you in this moment, and in this moment, I know you're gonna show up because you always have. And I think that also is a significant thing that we can take from this show as well. Is that when you look over your journey, because that's what you had, a journey. When you look over your journey, you can see where God always showed up. Always. When you didn't have a hostel booked, you didn't know, you said you wanted, you said, oh, I want to take a train. All of a sudden, you meet someone who's now going on a train to Budapest, and then you get across a whole area that you have no idea how to get to in 45 minutes there and back. And the train didn't pull off. The man said,
waited for me.
Yeah. And it's all because this is something that you got to hold here. Because when God makes time for you, God makes summertime. Because it was in reality, it wasn't just about you, but it was all about you.
Yes.
And that's the beautiful thing when we talk about our lives, because God allows us to intertwine with other people to show us that it's not all about us. But the crazy thing about it is that when it comes to us, it is all about us. That He, in other words, don't miss what I'm saying by hearing what I said. Because basically, He has His attention and His focus on bringing us to the place that He already has ordained for us. But by doing that, He makes it so we are now that vessel that He can do the same thing in somebody else's life, but it's still all about us. When it's all about somebody else, Oh, God,
He's so good.
Yeah, He is.
So
good.
And it really is about the free fall and allowing yourself to fall. So it's... And the funny thing is I'm scared of what's the most natural thing about me is I know that whenever I'm in like the studio and I'm taking the time to put this audio track here and I'm putting hours, days into a project, and then sometime, and I know, and like earlier I'd be going to band practices and things like that, and to bring it back, I have lots of musical ideas in my head. And so I've always thought that the best way to get them down is to go put it on paper or go to record it so you don't lose it. And it's like, how do you lose something that's like ever flowing for me. And so I say my music represents the most God's love because it's always present. And that's something I have to realize, like, this is already something, like, I know my lesson for me is that, like, it doesn't, I found that when I get a musical idea and I'm like, oh, I don't want to lose that. I gotta record it. Like, the idea stops flowing. And maybe, or like, I'm like, oh, I want to do this, and there's some songs that I've completely lost, or I don't remember, or God's just going to have to give it to me at a different time. Like, I get melody lines in my head, but they are always coming in. And I found that I've gotten to a point where I've been able to, like, I can sing a whole line of I can go everywhere. If anything, it feels like I speak in tongues through my music, and I can just use my voice for that. And so if that's what I can know on my own, and if anything, this technology can't even keep up with my brain, because that's what I've been complaining about. I've been like, I wish I could find technology that could allow me to, this is already answering my question. I'm like, I wish I could find technology that could allow me to spit out music as easily as it comes to my head. And it's like, you're that technology.
You are.
And it's
You're
like,
the instruments.
So that's what I'm nervous about. That's what I've been nervous about. So thank you, God. You're cool.
Yeah.
just answered your own question. Like,
Yeah.
am I saying my own answer? Yeah. But yeah, I was nervous about going because I didn't have the safety net that I created, but that's already hindering me from free flowing. Yeah, I just did a pre-performance yesterday, and I messed up a bit. God used it perfectly to the situation and taught me my own lesson in that, and I felt fine in it. But I messed up because I was trying to memorize my song, and I was just like, I haven't played this in so long. And he's like, well, you don't mess up when there's like nothing to compare to, or there's nothing to.
So I totally agree that what you're saying is your music is like relationship with God, whereas there's no boundaries or borders to it. There's no beginning or end to it. So to try and capture it and put it down and put a structure to it hinders what it could be, and hinders the beauty and the creativity of what it is. Similar to even like in what we do as church folk, right? Like we get a building and we get an order of service, and that hinders what God is trying to do.
Yeah, and then
are we not tapping into something?
I like what you said too, because it's not. God kind of shared with you that it's not a mistake when you're not comparing it to something else. And, I was watching this other Pastor Mike Todd, and he said this. He said, don't let comparison be your counsel.
Come on, man.
You know, and that's serious, because see, you know, when you're always measuring yourself, you know, even Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, I think it's verse 12, it says, those that compare themselves among themselves are not wise. You know why? Because see, some commend themselves because they do certain things, and some condemn people because they do other things. But the reality of it is that your measuring stick or your plumb line must be God, you know, and how He created you, and how your relationship is with Him. Because what basically in any relationship, you know, each person, you know, shares who they are with that other person, and therefore they become as that cohesive, you know, couple, or however you want to coin it. But God, the way He deals with me is not going to be the way He deals with somebody else, because He's individually in love with me.
Hello.
You know, so I don't have to compare what your relationship look like to say that my relationship ain't right, because He's individually in love with me.
Amen. Amen. So speaking of which, so we have this conversation has gotten so good, but I digress. I want Summer, you to say how people can get in contact with you, how they can listen to your music and buy your music, how they can book you, if they want to. What are the best ways to get in contact with you?
Okay, so I think the easiest way right now is Instagram. I am the Summer Mensah. So on this podcast, you might see like Mensa, but it's the TheSummer Mensah. Sorry, I just had to spell that out for you. But just, hey.
And we will definitely put that in the post as well.
Yeah. So that's the best way, and I have a website linked to that, but it's just so long. So
check out IG, check out Instagram, and then you can get the link to her website.
Or you can email me at summermensah@gmail.com. So,
All right.
Yes, she has. Did you want to sing something else before we go?
We can sing in choir beyond. I only have the same song. Unless you wanna, you guys wanna join with me?
I'll sing something.
Come on,
but I don't know what.
Do you guys know the word? All I have is the same Fred Hammond song. Beyond.
Well, sing something of yours, personally.
Oh, I love you, God. Thank you for all you have done. I see your hands raised for me. I thank you, God, for all you've done. You have so much love for me. I thank you, God, for all you're doing. I thank you for your grace for me. I love you, God, for all you've done for me.
Go girl! Go girl!
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That was
that was
good.
a beautiful way to wrap up the show.
So yes, it was awesome.
By the way, I made that up on the spot.
I figured I wasn't gonna say nothing, but I was like, "That's new."
Yeah.
I knew it. That's called spontaneous worship.
Yeah.
That's called spontaneous worship. So at least you can go back to the podcast if you want to. If you want to develop it or delve into it a little bit more. That's the beauty of God. That's the beauty of God. So we thank you for joining us and listening in. We will see you guys next time. Holla. Say bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Catch you later.
Holla.